All right. We can get this meeting started. I know we have a lot of exciting things to talk about. And so, welcome everybody. I think it's our first time in a while doing a local landmarks commission with an audience, so that's exciting. So we will first move forward with the approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
And then all those in favor say aye,
Discussion.
Aye.
or discussion. Anyone want to discuss the minute? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, all those opposed, none. We'll move forward with that. So just some regular staff updates. The big thing that we want to take care of on the agenda today is have our presentation from our wonderful folks from Northwest Vernacular. They're here in the audience. I'll let them introduce themselves, but that will be the main focus of the meeting today. And so after the presentation, you all on the commission will have the opportunity to ask questions and have that discussion with them about this process. And then we'll have that discussion with the audience as well. And then they will be here once the meeting formally closes until 4 p.m. to be able to answer additional questions from anyone that can't come to the actual meeting but would like to get some information. So I will hand it over to our wonderful friends.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Katie Pratt with Northwest Vernacular, and this is Spencer Howard. And we're the historic preservation consultants who are looking at the potential downtown historic district and putting it together. So I'm going to move forward for here. You can tab with this. So what we're looking at today is the historic district boundaries. So Spencer and I were here earlier today and walked the boundaries and familiarized ourselves with the downtown area. But we're talking about the National Register of Historic Places, which is the official federal list of district sites, buildings, structures, and objects significant in American history, architecture, archaeology, engineering, and culture. And so to qualify for listing in the National Register, a property must possess historic significance, meaning it has a story to tell, and then integrity, meaning it's able to convey that story physically. And a district possesses a significant concentration, linkage, or continuity of sites, buildings, structures, or objects, united historically or aesthetically by plan or physical development. There are 4 criteria used in evaluating properties for their eligibility to the National Register. A, that they be associated with important events that have contributed significantly to the broad patterns of our history. B, be associated with the lives of persons significant in our past. C, embody the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction, or represent the work of a master, or possess high artistic values, or represent a significant and distinguishable entity whose components may lack individual distinction. In that last clause, where districts come into play. And then D, have yielded or may be likely to yield information important in prehistory or history. Properties only have to meet one of those criterion in order to be eligible. But in looking at your downtown district, we believe that criteria A and C apply. C because it's a district, it's a collection of buildings, but also A because it represents patterns of development and how Dallas came to be. So I had mentioned that in order to be in the National Register, properties have to have a story to tell, and then they have to have physical integrity. And oftentimes there's confusion between what integrity is and condition, and those are different things. So there's 7 aspects of integrity: location, setting, design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. So location is it in its original location? Has it been moved? Noting that setting, what is the surrounding character? Whether it's in the district, the surrounding character of the district, or if it's an individual building, what does it look like? And what was it originally versus what it is today? The design, materials, and workmanship kind of get at how the building or structure was put together, and those architectural features. Feeling and association are two of the more subjective criteria in looking at feeling for this area. Is it's an active commercial downtown. We drove in and immediately we're like, this is a downtown Main Street. It's immediately recognizable as such. And association, the place where the event occurred, looking at historic photographs and then seeing the downtown area today, walking through it, you get the sense that it's the same place and you feel like you're there, and the association of commercial activity continuing to happen downtown. So that's okay, Spencer. These are the boundaries. The black hash line is the boundary, the proposed boundary for the downtown historic district. So we're coming on after previous work has been done by great consultants that have done a ton of legwork in doing the reconnaissance level survey, and then a draft multiple property documentation to really pull together a lot of the historic context for Dallas. And then this was the recommended district that was put together. I believe it was in 2019, 2020. And so, but since then there's been 3 years, so changes may have occurred. So we're kind of cross-checking what was recommended versus what we're seeing on the ground today. So this was what was proposed, and we walked it today. Spencer took photographs. So if anything changes, we'll have a recommendation on why we think it should be changed, and it will be based on those that integrity that we talked about, if that has changed in the last few years. So within the boundaries of that historic district, which we can see on this map here, and the next slide will have that, we're basically looking at every property or building and structure within the boundaries of that district and determining if it's contributing or non-contributing. And if it's contributing, that means it was built within the period of significance, which we're working through our research to narrow down what that period of significance is. And then if it's non-contributing, it's either built outside of that period of significance, or it has lost integrity. So there have been physical changes to the building, so it no longer is able to easily tell or convey that story of downtown Dallas commercial district. And so this next slide and this map that we have blown up over here is showing what we're looking at right now based on the previous recommendations, and we will update this after our field work that we did today. Spencer went in and he drew building footprints on top of this so we could get a sense of what the buildings, the scale of them. And he looked at Sanborn maps and then also aerial photographs over the years. And so the buildings that have the white infill where there's not a color, those are additions. So we were sorting that out today, like what building do they go with? And so that's why there's no data associated with that. We were out sorting that in the field in the alleys today. So we'll be processing this data and coming forward with kind of finalized recommendations based on our work today, and then also the fleshing out of the significance statement as part of the historic district nomination. But right now, based on what we were provided with the previous survey work, it was 37 properties were seen as contributing. 2 are already listed in the National Register, so we don't get to count those towards the contributing number, but they just are within the district. And then 9 are non-contributing, meaning they're either outside of that period of significance or they've lost physical integrity. And this is just an interesting, I know it's hard to see, but Spencer took the base kind of aerial map view of downtown, and then he overlaid the Sanborn fire insurance maps over the years. And so this is showing the 1888 Sanborn on the left and then the 1939 on the right. And so you can get up close and you can see kind of how the development patterns in the community have changed. And it's really interesting to see from 1888 to 1939 how so many buildings were replaced with more permanent brick structures. In the 1888 map, you can see that there's, narrow, long buildings, and then the blocks started taking over by at the turn of the century. And by 1939, a lot of the patterns that we see today are really firmly established. And so looking at the Sanborn maps and aerial photographs is going to help us in writing the historic context to really fine tune that period of significance. And so then we can really get that clear count of contributing and non-contributing for the historic district.
And so we thought it might be helpful to kind of see, and for both the commission and for the public to see, that there have been 2 recently listed National Register historic districts that in cities that are of comparable size in Oregon, and kind of see how the boundaries and how those wrap around on the commercial buildings within those communities, and that they're generally kind of close by. These are in Forest Grove, just 50 miles to the north, and Redmond to the east over in Central Oregon. Both are listed under the National Register criteria A for association with the commercial development for the respective cities, and C for association with commercial architectural characteristics of the city. So very similar to what you're looking at here. Forest Grove, their downtown historic district into 1940. And then Redmond has kind of a similar count on there as well. So statewide, in addition to the 2 most recent downtown commercial historic districts, there are 9 other downtown historic districts in cities of similar size and population. These have been listed in the National Register since the late 1970s through the early 2000s. This table provides a list of those historic districts, which city they're in, when they were listed. And we thought it was relevant to include which of those are participating in the Main Street program, which can be an important economic component to downtown sort of commercial and economic growth and long-term success. The Main Street approach offers community-based revitalization initiatives with a practical, adaptable framework for downtown transformation that is easily tailored to local conditions. Since this is a National Register Historic District nomination, we also wanted to talk through the difference between it and the Dallas Local Landmark Register, which those are 2 separate registers, 2 separate processes, and different implications for both of those. So we put together in this slide just kind of what are the frequently asked questions. And then in the 2 columns, we have a yes or no under the respective registers. So you can see, will it protect it from demolition? Yes and yes, but there's nuances to all of that. So overall, the National Register designation is, or listing, is an honorary designation. However, demolition requires review under Oregon State Land Use Planning Goal number 5. Oregon state law requires local governments to review proposals to demolish or locate property or relocate properties that are listed in the National Register. This rule under statewide Goal 5 requires protection of National Register resources. And this is important, and that protection is reviewed. So it's not necessarily saying that you can't demolish them, but it requires that if a property owner wants to demolish it, that they have to go through a review process, which is an important clarification. Another component too, real quick on this, is that for property owners within the district, They can object to listing on the National Register by submitting written statements accepting declarations of penalty of perjury to the state. And that is the method for property owners to be able to object to listing. So there is a process for that. One of them, or there's a couple, so financial incentives. What are the benefits of being a contributing building within a National Register historic district? And financial incentives are one of the main components of that. At the federal level, there are the federal historic tax credits, which is a 20% tax credit on building rehabilitation. At the state level, there's the state special tax valuation program. And then within Oregon, there are also several different grant programs. All of those typically require National Register listing in order to be eligible for that respective grant program. All of these programs collectively require typically property owner capital investment on them, but they provide a mechanism to bring additional funds into a building repair, maintenance, or rehabilitation project. One of the mechanisms for looking at that sort of the feasibility of the federal historic tax credit program is that in order to qualify for the program, you have to spend at least 100% or exceed 100% of the assessed value of just the building, excluding the land. And so one way of looking at that is to look at the Polk County assessment, the appraised value of just the improvements within the city. And that gives kind of an idea of how much money would have to be spent in order for a building owner to qualify for this program to use it for rehabilitation. And so out of that, there are at least 6 buildings where, the expenditures would be under 100,000. And then it kind of goes up based on the size and valuation of the buildings. One other component, and this ties in with the Main Street program, is that heritage tourism visitors stay longer and spend more money than visitors with no interest in historic resources. Having a historic district, National Register historic district, is a draw. It can also be a draw for small and startup businesses. It's an element that communicates place within a community, and it communicates that there's an importance placed by the community on those commercial spaces and civic spaces within the community. And last, just kind of as an overview on the next steps to kind of give everybody an idea of the sequence that this overall project is going to be going through. So we're working towards a June 30 date to have our first draft of the nomination submitted to you, collective, you and commission, the city, the state, well, actually city and Historic Preservation Commission for review, to go through that initial review. Then September 10th, we have the second public meeting scheduled through the Downtown Association. So that will be an opportunity for people to be able to attend, ask additional questions about the process and effects of National Register listing. And all of this is working towards a November 1 final submittal date to the state for their review, and then being able to get on to the State Advisory Commission, and then long-term towards having their approval, and then going forward to the National Park Service for review by the keepers. So there's multiple steps involved. It's a long time frame, but probably the key dates are that June 30th draft and the September 10th public meeting. That's certainly an important opportunity for the public for questions. And we will also have an updated district map at that time as well, too, with the updates on resource status, contributing and not contributing on there.
Right, are there any questions for us from you guys?
You didn't mention Independence. Independence isn't quite our size, but they've had a historic district for 30 years or something.
Okay.
It's been quite successful.
Oh, great.
And it's helped them grow, I think, and sustain their historic, character, aside
Mhm.
from the architecture of the new condos they built in town,
Mhm.
which are hardly historic. But, I think this is on our doorstep here. This is a good example of what
Mhm.
happens. Albany too is certainly an excellent example of what can be done, a little larger than us. but
Yeah.
They were smaller once too.
I will say in the two recent comparisons that we looked up, um, looking at the period of significance for those, your buildings are older, too. So that was, for us, that was always exciting to see that you have a distinct character with some more of those Italianate style commercial buildings, and that, is quite distinctive and unique and speaks to, kind of an older and long-standing presence
Mhm.
in the community. Those are pretty rare and on the West Coast. So they're for us, they're usually signifiers of, oh, this is an older community.
Mhm.
So having those documented is really important versus was it Forest Grove or Redmond? Redmond had 1910 was their starting date for their
Yeah.
period of significance.
That'd
You're
be-
30 years.
That'd be newish for us.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Honestly, one of the benefits we have is we had a foundry down here,
Mhm.
right down the street, and they, cast iron fronts were
Yes.
in vogue when a lot of these buildings were built. And they cast, those fronts right
Yes.
here in Dallas, and they have Dallas Foundry and the year. And you can find years like 1890,
Yeah,
right there on the building, cast into the building, which is pretty remarkable.
yeah, it's wonderful. We enjoyed discovering that this
Mhm.
afternoon when we were walking around downtown.
Yeah, brand new building is like 1950, which is what, 70,
Right.
73 years now. Oh, that would be considered pretty new.
Yeah,
This point of information, September 10th appears to be a Sunday. Is that the actual date? I think it's a Sunday.
is it a Sunday? I don't,
No, I didn't written that.
that may be written down incorrectly. Let me check on the calendar.
It should be.
It's a Sunday.
Oh, September 20th. That is correct.
Thank
Please write September 20th down. We missed that one.
That's what I have down here, September 20th.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate that catch.
September 20th.
6 PM. It'll be an evening meeting. Yes.
We have a fairly vigorous downtown association, so it's quite possible that meeting will be well attended.
Great. And I think with us having the draft submittal in at the end of June, getting feedback from you so that we would have a draft to share ahead of that meeting that incorporates changes and comments from you all ahead of time will be great so that people that attend aren't surprised with anything at that meeting that they have, if they want to, they have had a chance to look at everything, they've seen the map, and then we're just going over it and answering questions versus people processing on the fly when they get there because something's changed from this meeting to that meeting, so they're not thrown off by that.
I think it's worth pointing out, so that we're all on the level playing field here, that this is not an opt-out system. In other words, if you are in this, you say, well, I don't want to be in this.
Yeah.
Similar to what there's an opt-out system in Dallas for our registry,
Mhm.
but not for this one. If you're inside these boundary lines, you have to join with others within that boundary line. 51% of you, of the owners, and I'll get to that in a second, 51% of the owners have to opt out, vote to opt out, and provide a certified letter.
Yes.
This isn't just like an email.
Correct.
This is
Does not need to be
formal
certified.
opting out.
Oh, was it,
It does not need.
it doesn't have to be notarized anymore?
No, it does not.
They
Well, it
changed
used
that.
to be.
Yeah,
That was, the literature still says that.
They issued a new white paper guidance on that.
Okay, it's in one of your, the SHPO's bulletins.
yeah,
Bulletin 6, maybe something like that. Anyway, it has to be formal. It can't be just off the cuff kind of remark. And again, it has to be a majority of the owners. When they talk about owners, if you own 3 buildings, you get 1 opt-out vote, as I understand it, not 3 opt-out votes.
I believe so, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Robert said-
Oregon has gone through and created
Yeah, they've
that
gone through it.
very clear
Correct.
guidelines on what that looks like, what an owner
Is that the
is.
outcome? Is that you get 1 vote if you own multiple properties?
Believe so.
That's the latest
I think
word
s-
from SHPO
I-
that
That's my understanding as
Encountered.
well. And we can pull up that.
but that's an
literature.
important point because we have owners here in within that district of multiple buildings.
Right. No, and that is, that's a concern that's happened in the past, and that's why they've clarified, these rules, about what that looks like. Because there've been more complicated situations where dividing up ownership, to get more votes, and that to kind of circumvent the system. But yeah, and that's where there's a clear distinction and why we wanted to talk about the National Register of Historic Places is one thing. The Dallas Landmark Register is different. The terminology is used, that's the same, and it can be very confusing for folks, but the process is different. And that the National Register is honorary, and it's only that in the state of Oregon, National Register properties have that demolition review as an added layer of protection so that you have to have a public hearing regarding
And that
that
includes
demolition.
moving the building
as well as moving the building, yes.
even if it's moved within the
Yes.
district.
Which, and that doesn't mean that it can't be moved, it's just
Right.
you have to have that additional process.
We've got a few buildings that have been moved around in over the years, not a lot, but some.
Yeah, well, I mean, we just recently worked on a project where it was a building that it needed to be moved in order, it was either gonna be demolished because of erosion, or it was gonna be moved, and it was seen as not as an adverse effect to the building because it was saved, because it could be
Yeah.
relocated.
I doubt that that would be much of a problem. We did have a building on the National Register, our Dallas Tannery,
Mm,
that was built, essentially thrown up after it burned down around 1900 or so. And was not built with to last. It wasn't built for the ages. And
Yeah.
it became a National Register building. And shortly thereafter, it became apparent that it was all rotting and falling apart. It was literally just wood
mm.
in an environment where wood rots. And they received permission to tear it down and leave the National Register. It's fairly unusual, but there really wasn't a lot of choice.
Yeah.
You would have had to just basically build a replica of the building.
Right.
Because it needed so much work. So it's possible to demolish. It's not like you can't do it.
Correct. Any other questions?
There's no additional questions from the commission. We can move to adjourn the formal meeting and then they'll be here to remain for the open house portion. They can answer any additional questions that the commission might have or that anyone in the audience might have.
When will our group have other business where we can discuss internal landmarks business? I have a couple issues. But the group doesn't need to be here for that.
Yeah, we could schedule an additional meeting probably next month. 'Cause,
Uh,
yeah, I just want to make sure that this meeting's focused on this presentation, and then if we have to schedule an additional meeting between now and next. week.
Okay, well, the big thing I want to bring up is very time sensitive, so we couldn't wait another month for it, I don't think.
Okay, well, we could bring it up now before we close this meeting then.
All right. I thought that I submitted this to be on this meeting, but didn't hit. Anyway, our new national landmark, the Dallas Cinema. We want to celebrate that. I've talked to Jeff Mexico, the owner of it, and he's all for that. And we both centered on the idea that it would be best the best thing in terms of 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 celebration if we want, which we do want to have, the downtown association wants to have it, and I think this group wants to have it, would be something of a party. And the elements that would be best would, number one, would be good weather, not do it in bad weather, which means something in the summer probably. He would like to arrange a little entertainment and a type of movies that would show that evening or that day, to kind of highlight the thing. And number three, we want to put up a plaque, and that would be the ideal time to have the plaque erected and then unveiling of the plaque, which would be kind of the centerpiece of the celebration. And a marker of that. He sent me some photographs of some plaques that are on movie theaters around Oregon. In fact, there's one on the front page of the Statesman either yesterday or today of a plaque. The Silverton Palace Theater, I believe it is. Sue Rasmussen used to have it for years and years famously. Has sold, and it has a plaque on it too. So this group is the one that kind of been lateral the ball on the idea of a plaque. And as I assume that includes designing it and paying for it and getting an erection date, which would coincide in theory with the celebration. And it wouldn't necessarily be bronze, Don points out, but it could be like the plaques we have around town, the new bulletins, plaques that we have around town that are weather resistant and all that. Could be something along that order, or it could be a full bronze, which looks just like bronze but isn't meltable down by drug addicts when they steal it off the building. So I think that's the problem. I just wanted to discuss that, make sure that this group is engaged in that, and that we have a plan to some kind of plaque plan, let's call it.
Why don't you share the pictures that Jeff sent
You know,
you?
they're on my phone. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Text, email them to,
I can. I don't think any one of them is exactly what we want, but at least it shows that there are plaques up on movie houses, antique movie houses.
That's for this summer.
Yeah, it would be ideal to do it this summer. I mean, because it's
Yeah.
fresh. It happened this year. You let it go too long, it becomes kind of stale information.
All right, so I don't think, Charlie, you can correct me, I don't know what the budget looks like for this year in terms of any sorts of money.
Well, it would be nice, you know, if it was possible to get it done before June 30th, it's a bit expensive out to current fiscal year. But, I mean, I guess I don't have a full understanding of how much work the commission's going to do or how much work you want staff to do to make this happen. That's not clear to me at this moment.
Well, that's what I brought this up so we could talk about it and maybe assign some deadlines or something, or work plan or something. And I can do anything that y'all want me to do
I mean,
personally.
for me, the preferred option would be that the commission, along with the property owner, does a lot of the legwork to come up with the content, the design, selection of whoever you want to do it, come to us with a proposal, and we can go from there.
I don't know if the owner is gonna be real engaged in this. He's sometimes
Well,
not.
it's his building, so he has.
His
to
building.
approve the installation, so.
Right, well, I'm just thinking in terms of detail.
Concept.
Yeah, well, if you want me to continue to work with Jeff on content. And maybe it's I work with Sue on design. And if you figure about that, if that'll work, and then once we have a prototype or
Sure,
something,
yeah.
then we can bid it out or
It'd be nice to
something.
have, kind of a short little something from the building owner authorizing the installation. It is private property, so.
Yeah,
It's a little different than we previously done that here, where we're putting things on.
yeah, we've done that before, like the DDA got permission to put the train mural up on the side of the polka dots, so it's,
That document.
we have experience with the documentation.
So I would say, yeah, give them,
All right, well, I'll work it into my busy social schedule.
All supervised.
Thank you.
You can read the
You get-
typewriter.
You gotta earn your bonus somehow or other.
I know.
Yeah, we'd like to. see that happen. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, if you get the celebration, we could get the plaque potentially purchased in June and maybe have the celebration in July, something like that. You know.
Something like that. Well, this group has talked about more plaques around town, you know,
Yeah.
and once, of course, this, if this downtown district, historic district takes place, as it hopefully will in my mind. Then there's a lot of things to consider, you know, street signage, design colors, historic markers,
Mhm.
all kinds of stuff. This is just penny ante compared to that. Okay, sorry, there we go.
Yeah, and just to know, in the grant that we did receive from the state this year, in regards to the historic district, we do have money in that plan for a celebration for the establishment of the district, once that's in
Okay.
there. So we should be receiving some funding specifically for that as well, but that will take place once we have the actual listing secured. But is there any other discussion that we want from the commission before we adjourn?
I can't think of anything.
All right. Well, I'll call it at 3:07, Ben. And then, like I said, our wonderful consultants will be here answering questions from the public. And they will be here until 4 p.m.